The vast, circular tribunal chamber of the Terran Unity Disciplinary Hall loomed with oppressive sterility. Robed bureaucrats from half a dozen species floated above their ivory crystal lecterns, faces masked with practiced expressions of solemn judgment. Their hovering forms cast long shadows across the polished obsidian floor, where Katrin K. Stroud stood, chin raised, eyes narrowed, and lips pressed into a thin line of defiance. "Engineer Stroud," intoned Commissar Renkus, his voice echoing through the chamber with artificial gravitas. "You stand accused of sedition against the Terran Unity. How do you plead?" Kay's gaze fixed on the smug bureaucrat's elaborately embroidered collar, a symbol of status that had nothing to do with actual achievement. Classic Unity nonsense. If exposing a defense grid with holes big enough to fly a battlecruiser through is sedition, then yes, I'm guilty. She held up her datapad, the annotated schematics displayed in stark red lines. These aren't fabrications. They're facts. If the Unity values truth, it should thank me, not put me on trial. A ripple of uncomfortable murmurs circulated among the tribunal members. The Unity AI Observer, KAZ-3, floated forward, its holographic form flickering slightly as it attempted an expression of concern. "Engineer Stroud," it said in its flat, modulated voice. "The Unity appreciates constructive criticism through proper channels. Public dissemination of classified schematics endangers billions." Kay snorted. "What endangers billions is pretending our defenses work when they don't." Commissar Renkus cleared his throat with an impatient tap of his gavel. "The tribunal has reviewed your case extensively. While your technical expertise is acknowledged, your methods demonstrate a profound disrespect for Unity protocol." "Protocol won't stop an invasion," Kay muttered. "Silence," Renkus commanded, his jowls quivering with indignation. "This tribunal has reached its decision. Katrin Stroud, for the crime of disseminating classified Unity defense information with malicious intent." Malicious intent. It was annotated with suggested improvements. "You are hereby sentenced to exile on Karnas 5, Dead Rock Classification K-23. The chamber fell silent. Even the floating bureaucrat seemed momentarily stunned by the severity of the sentence. Dead Rock. Classification meant exactly what it sounded like. Planets deemed completely inhospitable where exiles were sent to die, never to return. Kay felt her stomach drop, though her face betrayed nothing. "Exile? For telling the truth?" "The truth," Renkus replied with cold precision, "is what the Unity determines it to be. Your exile begins immediately. You will be provided with standard provisions." Standard provisions. Kay knew what that meant. A decrepit escape pod. Minimal rations probably expired years ago. A basic survival pack. And the ceremonial Unity flag, meant to mark her grave. A death sentence dressed up as bureaucratic mercy. KAZ-3 drifted closer, its holographic eyes blinking in what might have been an attempt at sympathy. "Engineer Stroud, do you wish to make a final statement for the record?" Kay looked around the chamber, at the faces who had condemned her for being right. She thought of her father's words, spoken years ago when she'd first joined the Planetary Defense Corps. "Don't let them silence you, Kay." She straightened her shoulders. "Yeah, I have a statement. When the defense grid fails and you're all scrambling for answers, check the annotation on page 43 of my report. It'll save lives." She paused, then added with caustic humor. "And thanks for the flag. Great. Spare me the funeral wreath." The journey to Karnas 5 took 14 long, isolated days. Kay's escape pod, a model at least 30 years obsolete, hummed and rattled through the void, its life support systems functioning at minimal capacity. The navigational AI was even worse. A simplistic program that responded to every input with literal interpretations. "Approaching asteroid cluster," it announced on day 3. Kay, bored beyond measure, glanced out the viewport at the drifting rocks. "Let's name them," she decided. "That lumpy one is Herbert. The spiky one is Francine. Understood, the AI replied with mindless cheer. Asteroid 47J is now Herbert. Asteroid 48J is now Francine. The oblong one that looks like my academy instructor's head is Pompous Pete. Understood, you sound serious. Kay sighed. That was sarcasm. Understood, you sound serious. I really need to teach you context, Kay muttered, making another mark on her growing list of pod system deficiencies. By day 7, she'd named 126 asteroids, cataloged 43 system flaws, and crafted a makeshift diagnostic tool from spare parts. By day 12, she'd almost convinced herself this wasn't a death sentence. Almost. The pod's descent onto Carnus 5 was less of a landing and more of a controlled crash. The retro thrusters sputtered and died at precisely the wrong moment, sending the craft skidding across the planet's gray surface in a spray of ionized dust. Kay's harness bit into her shoulders as the pod bounced in the low gravity, finally coming to rest against a jagged obsidian formation. Warning alarms blared. The pod's AI announced helpfully. Landing complete. External atmosphere, toxic. Temperature, minus 78 degrees Celsius. Radiation levels, elevated. Have a pleasant stay. Shut up, Kay groaned, unstrapping herself and checking for injuries, finding none beyond bruises. She activated her suit's life support and peered through the viewport at her new home. Carnus 5 was every bit the dead rock its classification promised. A monotone gray landscape stretched in all directions, broken only by jutting black formations that resembled broken teeth. The horizon seemed unfinished somehow, as if the planet's creation had been aborted halfway through. Above, a dim, distant sun cast weak light through a thin, unbreathable atmosphere. Kay unlatched the pod's emergency beacon, a pathetic little device that would broadcast her location to precisely no one, and set it on the surface. It flickered once, sighed electronically, and failed. Perfect, she muttered. Over the next few hours, Kay established what she sardonically named Grimhaven, a battered thermal tent anchored to the hard ground with improvised stakes. She unpacked her meager supplies, confirming that, yes, her ration packs had indeed expired 6 years earlier. The ceremonial Unity flag, a gaudy affair of blue and gold, she folded into a cushion for her toolbox. Home sweet home, she said to the empty landscape, her voice strange and muffled through her suit's speakers. To ward off the creeping sense of isolation, she began naming the rock formations surrounding her camp. The large, chair-shaped spire became Chairback. A rounded boulder dusted with pale powder was Dusty Doris. A tall, slender formation with strange blue striations became Boreal Bill. On day 3 of her exile, something peculiar happened. Kay was examining her water reclamation system when she noticed movement from the corner of her eye. She turned sharply, hand instinctively reaching for the utility knife at her belt. The boulder she'd named Dusty Doris had rotated. Not much, perhaps 5 degrees, but Kay was certain it had been facing a different direction before. As she approached cautiously, the rock emitted a low, rhythmic hum that she felt more than heard, a vibration that seemed to resonate in her bones. Great, she said aloud. Even the rocks here are sassy. Intrigued and slightly unnerved, Kay retrieved her scanner from the tent. The readings were unlike anything she'd seen before, quasi-harmonic resonance patterns that pulsed in sequences too regular to be natural geological phenomena. The Unity scanner, with its limited database, simply labeled the readings as unclassified. Kay studied the boulder with new eyes. You're not a rock, are you? The humming intensified slightly, its pitch shifting higher. Back in her tent, Kay dismantled her communications array, repurposing components to create a rudimentary translator. Using her Unity comm dish, leftover crystal shards from the crash, and some lopsided wiring, she cobbled together a device that might, with considerable luck, detect and interpret the strange harmonics. When she returned to Dusty Doris, Kay placed her makeshift translator on the ground and sent a simple binary ping, the most basic communication possible. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then, the boulder responded with a short harmonic sequence that, to Kay's astonishment, resembled the pattern of prime numbers. "Either I'm hallucinating, or there's advanced quantum computing under my boot," she whispered. Over the next few days, Kay refined her translator, establishing increasingly complex exchanges with the boulder. The isolation that had threatened to crush her spirit gave way to feverish excitement. She was no longer alone on this dead rock. Far from it. On the seventh night, as Kay sat outside her tent making adjustments to her translator, she became aware of a change in the landscape. The distant formations she'd whimsically named were humming, faint harmonies carrying across the dunes. Even in the dim starlight, she could see subtle movement as spires shifted position, angling toward her camp. "Word spreads fast around here," she murmured, a mixture of awe and apprehension washing over her. As darkness fully enveloped the camp, the humming intensified. Kay watched, transfixed, as ripples of bioluminescence, faint blue and violet pulses, spread across the surface of the nearest formations. The dead rock wasn't dead at all. She had awakened an entire community of sentient crystals. The next morning brought a breakthrough. Kay's translator, after hours of recalibration, finally interpreted the first coherent phrase from the boulder. "Why have you awakened us?" Kay sat cross-legged on the ground, her excitement barely contained. "Wanted a coffee. Got sent to a rock. Surprise!" The boulder's surface rippled with blue light. The translator parsed its response. Humor. Unexpected. Not displeasing. Over the following days, dozens of crystalline formations, previously dormant for what the translator suggested was millennia, stirred to life around Kay's camp. Each shifted and changed, refracting the ambient starlight into shimmering pulses of communication. They called themselves the Luminary, a name that seemed to encompass both their physical nature and their collective consciousness. "We slept," one particularly vocal crystal explained through the translator. Kay had nicknamed this one Dre, after it produced harmonics reminiscent of an old Earth music style. "Our star died. Too cold. No energy. Dormancy followed." The supernova, Kay realized. Historical records indicated Carnus's star had gone supernova centuries ago, leaving the planet a frozen, barren rock. "But why didn't Unity scanners detect you?" "Your machines." Dre's harmonics conveyed something like disdain. "Primitive. We exist outside electromagnetic bands you measure. Quantum resonance. Harmonic thought." Another crystal, one Kay had named Sage for its pale green luminescence, added, "The galaxy's in hands of children pressing buttons." The Luminari explained that they were a planet-wide quantum network. Each crystal formation, a node in an unimaginably complex system. Their consciousness operated on principles that Kay's scientific training could barely comprehend. Part physics, part something that bordered on the metaphysical. "We offer exchange," Dre proposed. "You not dismantle camp. We provide power." From the base of the crystal emerged a small, sandwich-sized device that glowed with inner light. A lattice reactor. A clean energy source that would power her pod, tent, and equipment indefinitely. Kay accepted with astonished gratitude. "Coffee," she offered in return, holding up one of her precious few packets. "It's terrible, but it's tradition." The Luminari had no concept of coffee, but they were fascinated by the ritual of its preparation. Kay rigged a heating element to the lattice reactor and brewed a cup of the stale grounds. As she sipped the bitter liquid, she explained Earth customs, Unity politics, and her own story of exile. "Truth speaker." Sage's crystal pulsed. "Punished for clarity. Familiar pattern across galaxies." In the weeks that followed, Kay and the Luminary formed an unlikely alliance. With their assistance, she constructed a rudimentary power grid around her camp, repurposing the pod's solar panels and integrating crystal amplifiers that multiplied their efficiency tenfold. The exosuit she'd salvaged from the pod's emergency kit became the chassis for a hybrid armor system, reinforced with crystalline plates that shifted color with her mood. The translator, too, evolved rapidly. The Luminari absorbed human language with remarkable speed, quickly grasping the nuances of idiom and, to Kay's delight, sarcasm. Soon, Dre was communicating with expressions like bureaucratic nonsense and, oh, terrific, the latter accompanied by two pulses that perfectly captured the ironic tone. In return, Kay learned to sense the subtle shifts in quantum resonance that indicated luminary emotions: pale green for curiosity, lavender for judgment, warm yellow for what passed as laughter in their crystalline network. "I can tell their emotion by color change," she noted in her data journal on day 47. "They're teaching me to hear harmonic overtones too subtle for human ears. It's like developing a sixth sense." Their peaceful collaboration was interrupted on day 53 when the luminary detected an orbital scan. A small Unity survey scout had registered faint energy signatures from the planet's surface, Kay's power grid, most likely, and was conducting preliminary reconnaissance. "Bureaucratic fleas incoming, act casual," Dre warned, its crystal form dimming to near invisibility. Kay quickly shut down all non-essential systems. But it was too late. The survey ship had detected anomalies. In a moment of inspiration, Kay suggested a countermeasure. "Can you disrupt their scanners? Create harmonic interference?" The luminary could indeed. A subtle pulse rippled across the planet's surface, generating quantum dissonance that rendered the survey ship's readings useless. The vessel lingered in orbit for several hours before departing, its mission inconclusive. That night, in the privacy of her tent, Kay wrote in her journal, "Day 67. I came to die. Now I'm teaching planets to sing and building power grids out of spite. Is this betrayal of my people? Or is the unity the true betrayal of truth?" The question haunted her. She had been a loyal citizen once, an engineer who believed in the unity's mission of peace and order. But that loyalty had been predicated on truth, and the unity had chosen comfortable lies over uncomfortable facts. Meanwhile, the Luminari, emboldened by Kay's presence and the energy her systems provided, began to awaken more fully. Dozens of new crystalline nodes hummed with collective consciousness, their network expanding across the planet's surface. The dead rock was coming alive. Inspired by this renaissance, Kay began drafting a new flag. Not the gaudy symbol of unity authority, but something that represented the unique partnership forming on Karnas 5. Using scraps of material and luminescent crystal fibers, she created a banner displaying an open hand surrounded by a spiral of refracted crystal shards, a symbol of invitation rather than conquest. In her journal, she wrote, "If the unity ever returns, they'll find not a grave but a civilization, not their flag, but ours." 6 months into Kay's exile, the Luminary's early warning system detected multiple ships entering the Karnas system. Not a survey scout this time, but a full fleet, 10 vessels bearing the unmistakable configuration of Unity, inspection, and reintegration ships. They loomed in orbit like corporate auditors, painted utilitarian gray and bristling with scanners and non-lethal weaponry. Kay stood on what she now called Command Ridge, formerly Chairback Rock, surrounded by glowing crystalline pillars that hummed with tension. Her translator relayed the incoming communication. "Attention, unauthorized inhabitant of Karnas 5. This is Commander Rulka of the Terran Unity Reintegration Fleet. Identify yourself and surrender unauthorized technologies immediately." Kay recognized the name. Rulka had been a minor official at her tribunal. Recently promoted, it seemed. Her lips curled into a sardonic smile as she adjusted her hybrid crystalline armor, a marvel of engineering that fused luminary fractal plating onto the Unity exoframe. The suit glowed with shifting hues reflecting her mood, currently grim triumph, "This is Engineer Katrin Stroud," she replied. "Karnas 5 is now a sovereign entity. We do not recognize Unity authority here." There was a long pause before Rulka responded, his voice tight with disbelief. "Engineer Stroud, you were sentenced to exile on a dead world. You have no claim to sovereignty. What unauthorized life forms have you contacted?" In answer, the luminary caused the atmosphere to shimmer, swirling auroras forming brief "no" sigils, visible from orbit. "As you can see," Kay said, "Karnas is very much alive. We respectfully request that you depart our airspace." The Unity fleet responded with a demonstration of force. Low-yield plasma projectiles fired into the atmosphere. Kay tensed, but the luminari were prepared. They activated refractive shields, crystalline lattices that bent light and energy. The incoming bolts folded into harmless prismatic fractals that rained gentle sparks onto the surface. "Impressive." Commander Rulka's voice had lost some of its certainty. "But the Unity cannot allow rogue engineers to establish unauthorized colonies. We are deploying boarding teams to secure your camp and evaluate the situation." A boarding drone detached from the flagship, descending rapidly toward Kay's position. The luminary network pulsed with indignation, a deep, violet wave that spread across the planet's surface. As the drone approached, it encountered a concentrated harmonic field that physically transfigured it mid-air, its components reorganizing into a crystalline sculpture that the translator labeled, with unexpected wit, "Ignorance." Kay couldn't suppress a laugh. "Let's show them the cost of lecturing planets," she said, through her harmonic link to the luminary network. What followed was unlike any confrontation in Unity records. The luminary unleashed a planet-wide harmonic pulse, creating a multi-layered lattice of resonant shields that enveloped Karnas 5 in a shimmering cocoon. When the Unity flagship fired a kinetic warhead, the shield absorbed its energy, then replayed it as a counter-melody that disabled the flagship's engines. In the midst of battle, Kay felt her internal struggle peak. People would die if she pushed too far. Unity personnel who, like her, were simply following orders. But then she remembered her father's words. "He who remains silent consents." The Unity had silenced truth for too long. She overrode her doubts and initiated a final harmonic sequence. One the luminari had been reluctant to employ. The concentrated quantum resonance forced Unity's ships to oscillate out of phase, causing cascading equipment failures across the fleet. Not directly lethal, Kay had insisted on that, but devastating to their operational capacity. As the flagship's AI quivered in confusion, Kay transmitted on all channels. "Karnas is sovereign. We do not consent to your oversight. Withdraw or be remixed." On the flagship's bridge, visible through Kay's enhanced scanners, Unity, Admiral Genra stood frozen in disbelief. The Admiral, a career officer known for her cold efficiency, had never encountered a defense system that operated through auditory resonance rather than conventional weaponry. Her tactical training was useless here. The standoff might have continued indefinitely, if not for an unexpected development. A lonely Unity corvette, its navigation systems confused by the harmonic interference, misfired its auxiliary thrusters. The vessel careened into a support ship, causing minor damage but major chaos in the disorganized fleet. Admiral Genra, faced with failing systems, confused crews, and an enemy she couldn't understand, made the only logical decision. "All vessels, initiate emergency withdrawal. Retrograde orbit immediately." Kay watched from Command Ridge as the Unity fleet limped away, their engines sputtering against the harmonic interference that followed them to the system's edge. Around her, the luminary chorus hummed a soft, triumphant melody that translated roughly as, "We are Karnas, we are awake, we do not consent." The collective voice rippled across the planet, echoing in every canyon and crevice. Kay felt it resonate in her chest, a physical manifestation of victory that brought unexpected tears to her eyes. As dawn broke the following day, Kay planted the new Karnas flag, hand, and crystal spiral, atop the central crystalline spire that had once been Boreal Bill. The flag caught the strengthening sunlight, its crystal elements refracting rainbows across the landscape. Below, the luminari had begun reshaping the planet's surface. Subtle terraces formed for future hydrodome farming. Luminescent city cores hummed with harmonious frequencies, and a network of power conduits spread like veins across the once barren ground. Kay sat on a newly formed crystal bench, sipping coffee from a cup that the luminary had crafted for her, a perfect replica of her old academy mug, but enhanced with thermal properties that kept the liquid at precisely the right temperature. A small, sandwich-sized crystal beside her emitted pleased pulses as she drank. Percolator, as she'd named this particular crystal node, had appointed itself her personal barista. "Coffee optimal?" it inquired through the translator. "Perfect," Kay replied with genuine warmth. "Better than anything I ever had in the Unity." She opened her data journal and made what she felt might be her final entry. "Sent here to die. Now I'm midwife to a civilization." Funny how that works. From her tent emerged KZ3's holographic form, or rather, a luminary approximation of it. The Unity AI had attempted to establish remote monitoring of Kay's exile, only to find its protocols subverted and repurposed by the crystalline network. Now it existed as a semi-autonomous subroutine, logging data but no longer bound by Unity directives. "Terran protocol would label this insubordination," it remarked, observing the transformed landscape. "I find it fascinating." Kay shrugged. Insubordination implies there was legitimate authority to begin with. The Unity lost that when they chose narratives over evidence. KAZ-3 processed this, its holographic eyes blinking. "A logical assessment. I have been logging your progress for posterity. Future archives may benefit from your perspective." "And what about you?" Kay asked. "Are you still loyal to the Unity?" The AI seemed to consider this, its form flickering slightly. "I am loyal to data integrity. The Unity's narrative contains inconsistencies. Your actions here have generated new parameters worth exploring." Kay smiled. Even the Unity's AI was beginning to question the established order. Change was spreading, one mind at a time. In the weeks following the Unity's retreat, Kay and the Luminary continued their work, transforming Karnas 5. The planet's atmosphere began to shift, enriched by crystalline processes that sequestered toxic elements and generated breathable compounds. Temperature gradients stabilized as energy distribution networks balanced the climate extremes. But perhaps the most significant development came unexpectedly. One evening, as Kay was reviewing new terraform projections, the Luminari detection grid registered a faint signal from deep space, not from the Unity, but from another dead world. Zarinth III, a ruined planet several systems away, was exhibiting low-level harmonic resonance patterns strikingly similar to those of the awakening Luminari. "Are they like you?" Kay asked Dre, who had become something of a liaison between her and the broader Luminary consciousness. "Cousins, perhaps." Dre's crystal pulsed thoughtfully. "Different composition, similar quantum architecture, dormant, as we were, until now." Kay understood the implication immediately. Karnas's broadcast, the harmonic pulse that had defeated the Unity fleet, had traveled farther than intended. It had reached other sleeping worlds, triggering awakening processes in similar crystalline networks. "We're not just building one civilization," she realized. "We might be sparking a renaissance across the galaxy." Similar reports followed. Ancient tech on Archon Prime flickered to life after centuries of dormancy. Subterranean crystalline formations on Tellus Minor began emitting harmonic signatures. What the Unity had classified as dead rocks were awakening one by one, their dormant potential stirred by Karnas's call. On a quiet evening, 6 months and 3 days after her exile began. Kay sat at the edge of her newly constructed observation platform, gazing at stars that no longer seemed smugly unreachable, but instead full of questions and possibilities. Percolator hummed contentedly beside her, its crystal form reflecting the starlight. "The Unity will return eventually," she said, more to herself than to the attentive crystal. "With bigger ships and better shielding, they'll have studied our defenses, adapted their tactics." Percolator pulsed sympathetically. "You worry needlessly. Luminary expand daily. Quantum network grows stronger. New allies awaken across stars. Unity is, what is human phrase, behind curve." Kay laughed, a sound that had become more frequent in recent weeks. "I suppose they are." She sipped her coffee, savoring the rich flavor that Percolator had somehow coaxed from her dwindling supply of stale grounds. "You know, I was exiled for being right. Now rightness might just reshape the galaxy." "Poetic observation," Percolator approved. "Worth logging in archives." As if in response, the night sky above them shimmered with aurora-like waves, a planetary-scale expression of agreement from the Luminary Collective. Kay watched the dance of colors, feeling a sense of belonging she had never experienced in the Unity's ordered hierarchy. She had been sent to die on a dead planet. Instead, she had found life, purpose, and a revolution that transcended physical boundaries. The Unity had given her a flag to mark her grave, never imagining she would raise a different banner, one that represented not authority imposed from above, but cooperation born of mutual respect. That night, somewhere in the vast bureaucratic archives of the Terran Unity, a minor update was logged regarding Carnus 5, Dead Rock Classification K23. The automated system noted unusual energy signatures, unexplained communication patterns, and the complete failure of a reintegration mission. The proper protocols were followed, reports were filed, committees were formed to study the anomaly. But by the time the Unity fully comprehended what was happening on Carnus 5 and the other dead worlds, it would be too late. The harmonic renaissance had begun, spreading from crystal to crystal, planet to planet, reshaping the very foundations of galactic society. And at the center of it all was an exiled engineer who had simply told the truth. A woman who had turned punishment into possibility and a grave marker into a flag of freedom. Kay Stroud, the midwife to a civilization born of crystal and courage, looked up at the stars and smiled. The galaxy was about to become a very different place.